Very good, thank you. Yeah, it's a long time since we've been on the podcast. Well, actually, you already know what I've been up to because we've been speaking. But yeah, I was just going to show you.
I don't have all the details in like a succinct time.
No, but look what I'm wearing. I mean, sorry for anyone who's just listening to this and not watching it. But look, got my ABBA t-shirt because we went off to see ABBA Voyage at the weekend, didn't we? And it was
did indeed.
It was a Christmas gift for our dad, and we went, both of us, with our other sister, and without getting into whether or not, you know, the value of the music or any of that sort of thing. I mean, it was just one of those experiences. It was just this absolute pure joy, and I just think that those moments are just so important and sort of epitomise. I mean, when we're talking about hospitality, sort of the wonder of hospitality. I mean, it was just absolutely fantastic experience, regardless of whether you like ABBA or not. I mean, just sitting there and just wondering at the use of technology, the inventiveness, the creativeness. It's absolutely amazing. But then, just obviously with my little hospitality head, you walk in and just sort of like, they know their market so well. I mean, that you walk in and it is just Prosecco bars. We know who our audiences are on a Sunday lunchtime.
ready to go.
Pre-poured Prosecco, yes please. That's where we're at. Yeah. So anyway, but I've just mentioned it because actually I just think it's a really good example of, well, sort of it's that epitome of what hospitality is about, isn't it? So sort of creating excuses and reasons for people to come together and just sort of escape and experience just a bit of joy, whatever that is. And it was, I just had a really, really good time. And obviously we had a day out in London, didn't we? We went down to London for the day, and I loved it. Yeah, it was lovely.
I'm still not convinced that I love ABBA, but for the time I was in that room with all those other people, I definitely loved ABBA for that hour and 40 minutes. Definitely.
As I say, it's not even about it's about whether or not whether or not you love ABBA. There's so much to appreciate in that, isn't it? I mean, just like their use of their use of technology, their use of lighting, their use of creating atmosphere and experience. Bearing in mind, like it's a virtual experience, so they're turning it around super fast. So all those people are being ushered in, have been given the best possible experience they possibly can be, being absorbed into a room with an hour and a half worth of experience to get the most enjoyment out of that, and then quickly chucked out so that they can turn the building around quickly and get everyone back in again. Yeah, more than politely. It was amazing. Yeah, absolutely fantastic the way they did it. But obviously, if you're just sort of watching it from the able to see it from an operations point of view, you just see what everyone's doing, which is all, it's all so carefully strategized, so carefully planned, and then executed so exceptionally well. It was just sort of a bit of a wonder to witness in any case. I was really, really, really impressed. And I just love it. I think I said to you at the time, didn't I? It was like watching a close-up magician, who I happened to watch a close-up magician the other day, actually, so I could relate this really quickly. But what they're doing, the sleight of hand, you can sort of see it, but you sort of go, no, I don't want to see it. No, I'll go with you. I have so much respect for the hours of work you've put into this and the experience you're trying to create for me, that I'm going to participate in this just as a spectator and enjoy it just as it is. And I think that I was just really, really, really impressed. I say impressed, just made happy by the whole experience. Apart from anything else, obviously spending time with my sisters and my dad for the day, which was lovely as well. Yeah.
I think for me it is what you were sort of saying there about how every little detail. So just it's all been planned to make sure. I think as well. Obviously,
I know.
Obviously.
Yeah, I know, but
it's special.
I know. Anyway, so warm and fuzzy moments. Actually, what I wanted to talk about today was I've just been having quite a few conversations recently, just about sort of my experiences, but also sort of the purpose of the podcast and all of those kind of things. And it was it was really to sort of say, so, you know, actually those not so good experiences and the lessons learned on the way, and so the purpose of the podcast was always to sort of say, yeah, look, you know, I am a successful operator. I've had 30 years doing this, and I've won all these awards, and yeah, and you know, and all of that's absolutely undeniable that there's been huge successes in my career, but actually it's been really hard learned, and you know, not just by, you know, picking it up as I went along, but actually experiencing some really awful moments where it's gone wrong, and actually in times when you can see it going wrong, and you just don't have the tools or knowledge to do anything about it. And I think a really good example of that, which is what I wanted to talk about, was my restaurant that I had, that's fine dining, my fine dining restaurant. And I know we mentioned it in a previous podcast, and also mentioned how successful it was. So it was, you know, it was a city centre fine dining restaurant. We had 3 rosettes. We had Michelin on our doorstep all the time, looking at us and judging us. We were rated in the top 30 restaurants in the country by Which Good Food Guide. So we, you know, and we had people travelling up to London to visit us. We were featured in the Telegraph, the Times, the Guardian, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, on paper it was really successful, but actually it was only open for 3 years because we just never ever got enough people through the door to make it viable ever. And so it was sort of like reflecting on that as a challenge. So, you know, and actually how difficult it is to get your business plan right, and yeah, there was just so much in there really that I got wrong, massively got wrong, and even and sort of thought, well, you know, we'll work it out as we go along, which is kind of my attitude, you know, work it out as we go along, fine. Which is about learning. But actually, when you're talking about those vast sums of money, we ran out of time, basically. Ran out of time, ran out of money, but it really was running out of time. Yeah, so it was really just discussing that, and at the time, were you working for me still then?
But I think, what year was it?
2004.
So it was, I sort of left on the cusp of it because I got together with my husband in 2003. Well, wasn't my husband then, is my husband now, and decided that I didn't want, like, it wasn't the best idea having us work and live together. So it was around 2004 that I moved on to the things for a little while until I came back again. Yeah, because I can't resist it.
So yeah, but we discussed that, didn't we, also on a previous conversation, because at the time your husband was working with me, so he was
the head chef at Century.
So he was head chef at one of the venues. Then we opened the second venue, and he remained head chef there. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, so you left because it wasn't healthy for your relationship with both of you working together, which is spot on.
We couldn't. Yeah, particularly in those. I think we could do it now, but in those early stages when you're working everything out, it wasn't a good idea for us to spend that much time together, particularly in something that can be quite intense. When you've got to try to balance the front of house with the needs, with the kitchen and everything, it could get a bit confrontational.
There's some relationships that thrive in that, and some just like not going to work.
As I say, after 20 years, I think we'd work it out now, but not then. Not 20 years ago.
So anyway. I was reflecting on the mistakes that I say we made, but we did make them together, actually. I say he's now my ex-husband, but this story might explain why he's my ex-husband. But the mistakes that we made, and partly they came from his side of things, which was the kitchen and the fine dining sort of food, and sort of his push, his drive to be absolutely exceptional, which was our strength, but also potentially our weakness as well in that location at that time. But I think, you know, rather than speak for him and to him, I will, just reflect on the mistakes I made, which was that front of house and the business point of view. So we set up this restaurant on the back that we already had a bar serving exceptionally good food. So it was already winning awards for its food. And then we thought, yeah, we'll expand. And I tell you what we'll do a fine dining restaurant. And again, that was based not on necessarily, we didn't do market research to decide whether or not the area was the right place for it. We just decided this is what we want to do. And I think number one, that possibly is the first mistake. I think there's a lot to be said. My career is actually based on me doing things that venues that I would love.
I was going to say, I felt that's what the bar was. I think you were fulfilling your own need, but it just happened to be that there were lots of people around that area at that time who had very similar needs. And
so but I think that's a very viable place to start, that you start with, I have a vision for what I think a great venue would be, because it's the sort of place I would want to go to, and that gives you a really real emotional engagement with real emotional engagement with the business, but also an emotional understanding of your potential customer, which I think is really important. And it's and there's something very nice when you're a small independent, that you are able to come from that direction. You don't have to say, here, I've got a business, how do I learn about my customers and emotionally engage with them? Because you've started off from that position. So it's one of the wonderful advantages of being a smaller operator, that you're always going to be niche. You're always going to be only looking for a small section of the market, and therefore you can apply it to actually what you want, because if you like it, there's going to be other people like you.
Absolutely.
I think that the problem, and that had always worked with the first venue, because it was a small venue. When we first opened, it was only 17 covers, and then 2 years later we bought the next door property and increased it to, I think it ended up being about 60 covers in the end. But that meant that because we were quite small, we were able to just to stay in that niche and to have an area of people, and know that we have those people in that area. And looking back now, I will say, how clever were we to pick that location? And location was absolutely fantastic. But I will admit to there being, I was going to say it's luck. It wasn't just luck. There was more to it than that. But fundamentally, when you're opening up businesses and you've not got a lot of capital to get you started, and you're very constrained in financially, then you end up having to pick some sites that other people are overlooking. And whilst I can claim that's just because I'm really, really clever about this,
I think the clever bit is applying the creatives, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think if I'm being honest, particularly that very first place, that was we'd looked for we'd been looking in another area of town which was already established, already had an audience that was exactly our audience, but actually the property prices were too high for us, and there weren't very many properties available. And then there was lots of objections to us even opening the bar in that area. So then I had to rethink, and we found this other area of town which was up and coming and earmarked for investment in the area. And therefore, I mean, we got my first venue. I mean, this is crazy stuff. My first venue was it had a cellar. Then it had been a butcher's, and it was one of those, it's a terrace of shops, an old Victorian terrace of shops. So it'd been a butcher's at the front, and then someone's accommodation at the back, and that accommodation then gone up over another 2 floors. So it was a 2-story, that's right. So my brain just really went then. So 2-story with a retail bit at the front, and it had been sat empty for 9 years when we came along, because it was in an area that was not doing anything. It was beautiful architecture, but nobody wanted to be there. The council had just done some investment in the area to clean up the area, and it had some government funding for a smaller amount of regeneration in the area. But still nobody was coming in particularly. And we grabbed that property for £45,000. And it's just, you just look at that now and you just go, wow, because 10 times worth now.
Yeah.
I mean, possibly. And then this is right back at the time when, getting funding for hospitality business was really tough. I mean, I say it was really tough then. Now it's veering on impossible. But there were 3 of us in partnership together. So actually we raised 15,000 each. So actually that's how we got started. And I'm just not sure that, for somebody trying to start up now, and that we had freehold as well. So that was, in this world of hospitality, if you've got your freehold, then you've got so much better chance of success. Anyway, I'm onto the wrong business here. But equally, that was I remember setting that up and going, right, this is our principles. We want to bring our high quality understanding of the industry. So my ex-husband had worked in Michelin star restaurants. My other business partner was a designer who, expert designer, and I obviously front of house, and we'd all worked really high quality, high level places, and we were like, can we bring all of that into this tiny little local bar and make that work? And I was like, it was all about having only premium products. We never had any of where you have like your upsell products. We didn't have the entry products. We only had the upsell products. And so people were walking in and saying, can I have a Tia Maria? And you were saying, no, we don't do that. We have Plua. Can I have an Archer's? No, we don't do that. We have this wonderful German schnapps. And actually that was part of the whole thing that it was about. It was about, I want to say, educating people. That sounds patronizing, but it wasn't particularly. It was people had never heard that actually there were products better than the ones that they were better quality or more artisan.
Yeah.
And again, this was back in the days when this was a cafe bar, so we were serving, cappuccinos in a bar. It was like, whoa. But yeah, so that was a success, because at the same time that we moved into that area, so did so many other people. Our market moved into that area as well, because a terrace house on that street was £15,000. And the year we moved in, you could buy a terrace house on that street for £15,000, and within 4 years it had gone up to 80.
Yeah.
And I was going, yeah, that's because we opened a really cool bar at the end of the road. We're responsible for the house prices.
I'm sure you benefited.
I know. Well,
but it was ridiculous. It changes. I know so many people who bought at around the same time there. They did all right.
Nearly every house on there, because we were on the end terrace, at the end of the terrace, but there's all just terrace houses behind us, and nearly every single house on all of those terraces turned had a was sold and resold within 4 years. It was a dramatic change in the area, dramatic change in the demographic of the area, and so we rode that wave. So although there was a lot of, and I will take credit for, it was a really good business plan. It was a really well executed. We knew what we were doing. We knew who we were targeting. And then obviously I was working sort of 80-hour weeks. And I opened it. So my 2 business partners didn't work with me to start with. They carried on with their own jobs. So I worked every hour, and I just took on 2 part-time members of staff just to fill up the busy time. So literally we're open 7 days a week, and I was pretty much working every single hour. But that's youth for you. You can do that. So I'm not saying it was lucky and our success was luck, because it wasn't. But there was definitely an element of luck in that, because there was a huge amount of naivety. But there was naivety coupled with some understanding and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
So then when we went to the next venue and said, hey, let's just repeat it, but let's do it differently. Let's go into what we really like now, which is fine dining, and make that work. Again, we didn't have the money to necessarily choose our own location. So, and we were looking for freehold again. And we, the location we found was city centre. When you look back, you go, far from ideal. Really far from ideal, but it was what we could afford.
Yeah.
And we'd sort of looked at other places, and there was plenty of other places. There were plenty of fine dining restaurants that were you know, on industrial estates or whatever. And I mean, if you look just even close to, we're Leicester based, but even close to us, you know, Sat Baines, which is underneath the flyover. Actually, he opened after us, but that's beside the point. But but still, you know, there was that, you know, if you were good enough, people would come to you, and there was that expectation, and we knew we could be good enough. What we got wrong, and there was a number of things we got wrong. One of the things we got wrong was we overestimated the size of the market.
Yeah.
So the venue was actually too big.
Yeah.
Had it been half the size, we might just have survived.
Yeah.
And we might just have made it. But it was so big. It had, you know, it was huge. I mean, the restaurant itself, I don't know, probably 80 to 100 covers. I don't know. I mean, I know that our sister had her wedding there.
Yeah.
And she definitely had 100 guests there. But obviously that was putting tables together and stuff. But I think probably about 80 covers then. But then we also had this massive downstairs area, which was going to be a bar, but obviously never worked as a bar, because we weren't stand out enough as a bar. Even with cocktails and stuff, it wasn't stand out enough, and the venue was almost too big for us to dress it well enough to make it work. We didn't have the money to make it feel right. And the restaurant was gorgeous. Beautiful. Really, but the bar was, I would say, probably a bit cold. Well, although the really, really cool thing, we had it never worked either. We had the wall between the bar and the kitchen, just as you came through the front door, was a fish tank.
Yeah.
So you had this tropical fish tank, and you could see straight through the fish tank into the kitchen. It was very, very cool. It never worked because the poor old fish couldn't survive in that environment. So
it's a bit hot one side, not quite so hot the other side.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think we were boiling the fish.
Not quite.
I think it was a really weird. It didn't, and nobody could have told us this. Well, probably somebody could have told us this, but it was to do with the tank being too narrow. So there, it was about nitrogen exchange in the water, but I'm not sure that's true. But it was something to do with the air and not having enough capacity.
I was going to say, the thing is, nowadays, if you wanted to do that, you'd be able to find people who could advise you on things like that and tell you how to make it work. That didn't exist, you know. At that time, you know, you couldn't just Google someone who knows about fish tanks and can put one in my restaurant, you know, and find someone, or check on LinkedIn or whatever. You know, they just weren't around, or they might have been, but you didn't know where to find them. And it was just a different world.
That's totally true. I forget that context. So both of these,
pre-social media, all of it.
Pre-social media, pre-internet. My first venue, well, no, I say pre-internet. The internet existed, but it was dial-up.
Yeah.
And there was nothing on it. I literally opened my first venue with the Yellow Pages, and so you know, every piece of equipment that you needed had to be sourced through the Yellow Pages, which is, you look at it now and you go, how on earth would you do that?
Yep.
You know, because if you didn't, you know, even just getting a coffee machine, how would you ever even connect with the right person to sell you a coffee machine? I can't remember, and nor can I imagine how that was done.
I think you probably don't want to remember. It sounds very traumatic to me. Very stressful.
Yeah, maybe, but yes, you're right. You know, there wasn't. I couldn't go on YouTube and say, "How do you do this?" and then watch a video and 5 minutes later and go, "I'm an expert on this now."
Yeah.
We didn't. I didn't have that luxury. But yeah, going back to you know, the sort of what we got wrong. Spent all this time converting what was basically an old warehouse into this restaurant and bar, which was, I mean, it was beautiful, but it was, I totally messed up on not checking that we had a big enough market in the area. We assume, right, you're in a city centre, of course there's going to be enough people, but actually every city has a different dynamic. It's not even demographic, because the demographic was definitely there for it. It was just the dynamic of how the city works and really having a feel for that. And I didn't have that feel. I didn't know. And then then also just getting the scale of it wrong. So it was too big. I mean, there's a beautiful fine dining restaurant at John's House, actually, if anyone knows it, in Mount Sorrel, and it's absolutely perfect. But it's almost the same setup as what we were doing, and yet it opened with 20 covers.
Yeah.
And I know the intensity of what's going on in the kitchen. I know how many chefs are in that kitchen, but there's still, but if you're filling your restaurant every single day because there's only 20 covers and people are coming because it's a destination and it's working, then that's a far better way. I mean, it's much bigger than that now. I say they've over, I think they've been open about a decade, maybe a bit longer, but they've now expanded and grown the business further. But I think that's where, it was just totally inappropriate scale. We got it wrong. And then when we come back to the internet, then when we opened, I was so sort of exhausted from getting us this far. By the time you've planned something, we opened the door. I don't know. And I just remember standing there like going, okay, we've had our opening night. We've invited every dignitary in the area. We've invited all the businesses along. They've all come and taken a look. All the press that I can think of are involved. We've employed PR. They are doing PR, and I'm doing PR. We're getting national attention. Fantastic. But now what? Yeah. And it was so basically it was a really stark, like, I don't know any marketing skills other than advertising. What am I supposed to do? And this is pre-internet as well, pre-social media. Yeah. So what do you do
without those tools?
Yeah, and we didn't have those tools, and I just did not know, what tactics we could use. How could we make this work? And we did flyering in all the right areas. I say flyering, it was much more classy than flyering. Really, 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 really good stuff. But it just never had an impact. And fundamentally, my first business had pretty much grown by being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and then on word of mouth. Yeah. So us being exceptional at what we were doing, so that everybody was telling everybody else, and they were creating a tribe around what we were and who we were, and identifying with us. As I say, because I was really emotionally engaged with those customers, that I could translate that really easily. And so, it was. But this was sort of like, I don't know how to get to these people. I don't know how to engage with them other than just advertising, sending out flyers, getting press coverage. What else can you do?
Did you have
pretty much?
Sorry, so did you have a good picture of who those customers were as well at that point?
No, not really.
I think
because there was me and my ex-husband at the time who enjoyed going out to eat because he was a chef, and so you sort of think, well, we like this, so therefore other people like this. But actually, the naivety is unbelievable. I mean, my naivety is so unbelievable, and I just can't. I look, with embarrassment, how naive I was then. Just because there happens to be two people who happen to be, how old would I have been then? Young. mid 20s. These two young people who happen to save all their money to go out fine dining, and do fine dining because they, and really, even when you're that young, and this, I am being quite patronising. I'm being patronising to myself, so that's all right. But some of it is also playing at being an adult. Here I am in a fine dining restaurant, drinking fine wine, eating great food, and drinking a whiskey after dinner. Because look at me, I'm a grown up.
Well,
so I was totally
40 and only just feel old enough to do that. I only just feel like I'm not an imposter, and I've been around restaurants and fine food for 20 years now. I only just feel like I'm a grown up who can do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I pretty much spent so we opened, and I'd done all of the pre-opening activity, and I know I'd got that stuff right. But then I opened and was like, I'll just sit here and wait for 3 months, shall I? Is that what I do? And then by the time I realised that sitting around just waiting for customers to come through the door wasn't going to work, I was 3 months behind where I should have been. And I just I still didn't have any answers. And so therefore what you're then trying to do is going, okay, well, this element of the business isn't working, so how are we going to change that? What are we going to do differently here? And then you're talking about trying to change not the fine dining element of it, but even like the bar thing. How do we get people in at lunchtime? How do we get people to to just come in for a sandwich? And who are we competing with? Oh yeah, look, we're competing with Subway. And so how do we compete with Subway? We're a fine dining restaurant, but actually people are coming out their offices and not going for a fine dining lunch. They're grabbing a sandwich and going back to their desks. How do you compete with that? And so you're then having internal arguments about actually the offer that you're creating in any case, and how can it possibly work? There was a lot in that. So the next 2.5 years was me trying to make it work. And I say we had so many, we won awards, we were getting so much national attention, but that just because and what was really telling was, so it was working. It was working. People, when we closed, and basically I announced that we were closing, and then for the couple of months afterwards, people will say, oh yeah, I'd heard really great things about that restaurant. I never got round to going, and I'd always sit there going, if you had just come, perhaps we'd still be open. But the thing is, that is such a lesson. I mean, wow, what a lesson. So we were open for 3 years and people knew about us. We got the PR right. We got, we were known. People were proud that a restaurant like us existed. And they had in their heads that at some point they were going to come. They just never got round to it.
Yeah.
And so, that lesson was like, wow, right, okay, so PR works, great. Reputation works. We need to get that stuff right. But then we need to do something else, and that is find the excuse for them to make that first move. So that's all the purpose of what events are, what promotional activities are. When you put on a big event, that's what you're really trying to do, get people to make that first move or promotion or whatever. But then also understand that decision-making process can take years, and that just because you're not having an impact immediately doesn't mean that you're not having an impact. And therefore, when you are doing your marketing and your PR work, that actually it is all still building. But again, it's only sort of, not now, but because obviously since then I've had a number of businesses with, sometimes with similar problems, but for different reasons. But that understanding that, so marketing's one thing, but then sales is something different. And actually the sales is important as well. So getting someone to convert. So you've got somebody who knows you, they respect what you're doing, they know that at some point they want to come and use you, but they're already in their own habits elsewhere, and you need to create a sales is creating an activity that gets them to do it. And it's in hospitality, it's really, really difficult. I mean, it's difficult in every industry to get that right, but in hospitality it's particularly difficult because, and I know I'm as guilty as anybody else, that you as a customer, you like your routine, you like the way you do it, you want to try something new, but you also want familiarity, and you want to stick with what you know. So, and particularly right now, this is really pertinent at the minute, like with cost of living and not having a lot of disposable income people have, they don't want to take risks. I mean, I did it the other week where my husband and I were going out. I think just I decided, right, I'm just going to go and sit in a pub for a couple of hours on a Sunday. Lovely. Okay. And I thought, right, where are we going to go? Oh, this is pub. I really want to try. And then I just thought, you know what? I know it's on my list of places that I want to try, but what I really want today is to just sit and laze and not think about it, and just be somewhere familiar. So let's go to the place that is not amazing, but we know what it is, and we know what to expect, and we don't need to be taken by surprise. It's not because this isn't an occasion. I'm not going out for an occasion. I'm going out to just not be at home.
Yeah.
And so understanding that customers behave like that is really key to working out how you're going to get from marketing to sales to a really good customer.
I was going to say, I'm like the worst for it. So with the cafe, I was following the cafe from it being opened for 3 years from its opening until the day I hadn't got in once. I kept planning to, really wanted to for a few months. I even worked down the corner, and then until she advertised the job, and I was like, oh, that's my in. Obviously, you can't give everybody you want to be a customer a job. That's not going to work. But yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting, and I would love to hear more about it, because we get a lot of people coming in going, oh, this is my first time. I've been meaning to come for ages, and they almost invariably come back. But it's just getting them there in the first place.
And that's my naivety. Yeah. I thought that we were going to, because I knew, and my business has always been like this, I knew that the business internally was good enough that word of mouth was assured. Yeah. Word of mouth was assured, and repeat customers assured. I knew that once somebody came in, that pretty much I was guaranteed to keep them, and they were going to keep coming back, because we totally stamped on the competition in terms of our standards and our service and all of that. But the challenge was, missing the point that the challenge is that transition between knowing about us and actually coming to us for the first time. And that gap was something I'd completely missed, but also just did not have the knowledge or the skills as to how to do that. And over the subsequent, what has it been now? That's probably about, it's literally 20 years ago. Oh my God. But I've had 20 years more experience, and from that moment, I recognised that that's what was missing, and then I have tested so much, and the problem is there's no straightforward answer. There's not a straightforward answer, but there are tactics, and there are ways of being able to challenge that and to try and encourage that behaviour. But you've got to understand, this is all about human psychology, really. It's about and also what is a great learning is to see how those big brands do it. If you look at, I always used to wonder as a kid, why does Coke do adverts? Because everyone knows Coke, everyone drinks Coke. Why are they doing adverts? And you go, because it's about building that awareness, so that when you do have an impulse to have a drink, the first thing you think of is Coke, not because they think you're going to, and McDonald's do it now exactly the same way. It's just but as a small business, you don't have the opportunity to just hammer your brand at people, but
pummel funds into it.
pummel
until it finally comes back. Although you don't need to come back, you've got loads anyway. All the funds.
So I haven't got time to tell you all my learnings from this experience, but it was just, but the rest of the story is, I mean, that isn't the only thing. Well, actually, no, I think, do you know what? Honestly, that is fundamentally it. It is. We got the concept probably slightly off in the first place. We overjudged the market, and then I did not understand marketing well enough to be able to to be able to bridge that gap, and that's fundamentally where it went wrong. And so we opened in 2004. In 2007, the crash was happening. We closed. It was. We didn't close because of the crash. I mean, I'll pretend that it was because the economy took a downturn. It wasn't. The writing was on the wall way before that. What really happened was we ran out of time. It was working, and by that point, I had been able to find, make some learnings and start getting some headway. But we just ran out of time, because it was either close and go back and consolidate, which is what we did in the end. And we turned around, we went back to the original venue and turned that around, and that became even better, because we took all of this knowledge from this really hard learning and went and pumped it into back into the original, and made that even more amazing. Or the alternative was to find more money and just keep plodding away without any guarantee it was ever going to make a return. And sad though it was to close it, it was definitely the right decision, I think. And it was an awful experience though. So I'll just quickly, because
No, it's all right,
I know you've got to dash off. But when we closed, I opened with a 2-year-old in tow. By the time we closed, I'd had my daughter, she was 6 weeks old. I think she was 6 weeks old when I stood in front of our 50 members of staff. I called them all into a meeting and told them what we were going to close. And so I was telling our 50 members of staff, who were absolutely amazing. They were so wonderful. They were, as hospitality is, you had a bunch of professionals who really knew what they were doing, and I've actually gone on to some amazing careers in the industry actually. And then you had a bunch of students and people who were enthusiastic. Again, I mean, I'm so proud of where loads of those members of staff have gone on to. They're doing some amazing stuff now. But standing in front of them with a 6-week-old baby in my arms, telling them that we were closing the business and because it wasn't going to work, and then just having to deal with the emotional outpouring that came from that, which was just genuine, just sadness really from everybody. And it was a really difficult thing to do. And then winding up a business and dealing, and we got out of that we got out of it very ethically, I think, in terms of everybody eventually got paid. Not just our staff. Obviously our staff got paid. That was but we didn't do it by going into insolvency. We did it by closing the doors, selling the property, paying back the bank, and then paying back all our creditors, and doing that with funded through the other business, which put a huge strain on the other business and put a huge emotional strain on me. Massively, bearing in mind I had a 6-week-old daughter. So for the first year of her life, I'm dealing with huge amounts of debt and people knocking on my door saying, "Are you going to pay me?" And I'm going, yep, here it is. I've got the money. I've done it now. I'm transforming our other business. We had to go back and start that again and build all that again. Wow. Yeah. No wonder I feel old.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, well, I try not to think about this too much because I didn't find it traumatic. Well, I did actually. I think I probably did find it traumatic at the time. But, but then we go back to my business partner being now my ex-husband. I think it's quite, regardless of the personal dynamics in that relationship, I think to be able to get through that would have been probably more than anybody would have been able to do. So. So it ended eventually with us paying it all back, with us moving back to our previous business, building that business back up again so it could pay off all the debts, and then and that business then continuing to win awards with that then, but ultimately divorcing my husband. So I think the point I'm making is that it was a conversation I've been having and sort of touching on bits of this with where my learnings have come from, and I think that that's actually quite a key. It was quite a key experience from knowing how to, because actually even if we are talking about my divorce, understanding the dynamics of those relationships that you have at work and how to manage them better. I think that even that was a key learning as to how to make sure how you accommodate other people.
I noticed that obviously when you talk about it, it's all about what you've learned. So it's never, there's no sense that any of it was failure or anything like that. It's that you put in the work, you did everything you could at the time, and then you learn from it. So there's no, the only failure is if you fail to learn, and all of that stuff is the stuff that's informed everything that's come afterwards and where you are now. So yeah, it's a lot, but you've done learned a lot from it. You've done well.
I know, but I was. It reminds me of I was giving a talk at a conference. I think it was last year, and I was just basically giving a brief about because it wasn't about this, it was about something else. But I was just giving a brief resume, and I just sort of said, so this is my experience, this is whatever. I go, so I think I've probably completed my apprenticeship.
Yeah, absolutely. You put in the hours.
I know, but I did always say, when I said about that restaurant, closing, I did always sort of joke, it was a very, very expensive bit of education. It was very expensive piece of education, but it was education, massively so, huge. I went from when I opened it, I was genuinely naive. I knew how to run a bar, I knew how to run a business, but I went from being genuinely quite naive, capable but naive. And when I finished that, and if I put that finish point at being with my divorce, because at the divorce I also left the other business as well. So at that point, I was, I think, about 10 years. It was exactly 10 years into my career of being a hospitality entrepreneur. So 10 years, almost to the day, when I left my husband and the other business and said, here, you have it, I'm starting again. That period is so much learning that was involved then. Huge. Anyway, thank you for your time. I feel like that almost feels like therapy.
Well, but you've done the point is you've done all the work, haven't you? Like, you've done all the work yourself to take what you need to learn from it and bring it forward to everything.
Yeah, and I do, but I think this is the whole thing with sort of Kith and Kin and what we're doing here with the podcast and what I'm doing with the forum and now the Inner Circle. It is about being able to help other people shortcut. You don't want to make this mistake. This is a stupid mistake to make. It's a stupid mistake to make, particularly if you've got somebody else who can say.
But this is coming back to the fact that at that time you didn't have these connections. We weren't able to collaborate in the way we are now, and that's been enabled by obviously technology, especially. But things like Kith and Kin and bringing people together that way, you didn't have that. So going out into the world to give it to everyone else.
I've learned the hard way so I can help other people. Perfect. Thank you. I know you've got to dash off. I'll let you get on. Right. And I will catch up again with you soon.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Bye.
See you later. Bye. Thank you, my darling.